Aliens on Europa? That's what I'm talking about. Check this out. I just printed this. NASA unveils design for message heading to Jupiter's moon, Europa. Have you heard of it? Well, there's more water on the moon Europa than there is on Earth. It's filled with salt water, covered in an ice crust. And if you've ever been to the desert, just go to the desert and do an experiment, right? Get a puddle of water. I don't know, get a bucket, put some water in it, let it sit out there for a couple of weeks, and you're going to see life in the bucket of water. Where water flows, life grows. And what I'm about to share with you, this mission that's taking place, it appears they also think there could be life or know that there's life on Europa and or around Europa. So buckle up, Buttercup, because this is going to be a bumpy ride. So if you keep your money in the bank, you may want to listen to this. This is pretty wild. I got an email from Noble Gold Investments. U.S. banks filed to close 37 branches in a single week last month, with Bank of America, TD Bank, KeyBank together responsible for more than 2/3. So I don't know if you keep your money in the bank, but your savings could be at risk. What can you do? Well, check it out. Gold. If you watch League Project, you know I'm a huge fan of gold, and you should be too. There's never any guarantees, but if you look at the big banks, they are usurping enormous amounts of gold right now. The price of gold continues to climb, and gold is outside the government's reach, and it's safe from economic policies that jeopardize your wealth. Look, you've earned it. Get some and give them a call. Noble Gold Investments. Also, if you click the link specific, leakprojectgold.com, you can get free ebooks. If you call them, 1-877-646-5347, let them know Rex from Leak Project sent you. They will gift you, if you qualify, if you convert your 401 or IRA, a 1/4 ounce gold coin. Yeah, hello. Build your collection up. You'll thank me later. And let's get back to the podcast. We have a lot to discuss, so let's just jump right in, shall we? The launch is in October. The agency's Europa Clipper spacecraft is going to carry a richly layered dispatch that includes more than 2.5 million names submitted by the public. So not only are they setting up this space probe with over 2.6 million names, people like you, like me, like others that just send in their names because they want to be a part of this mission. Well, not only that, I took notes. There's going to be a plaque or a plate on the Clipper that is 7 by 11 inches. We'll get into that in a minute. There's 103 languages embedded that say water. They even have the images of water in vibration form. Europa. Now, also, as I was thinking earlier today, and I forgot to mention this until now, NASA probes and telescopes found evidence of carbon dioxide on Europa. Now, carbon dioxide, and this is a very well-known marker or sign of life. This is a big-time sign of life. Now, let's go to the article here. NASA unveils design for message heading to Jupiter's moon, Europa. 2.6 million names submitted by the public. I'm going to share with you some esoteric occult numerology in a minute, which is pretty substantial. It's a triangular metal plate that's on the spacecraft, and it's going to honor a connection with water, Earth, Europa in several ways. At the heart of the artifact is an engraving of U.S. poet Loretta Lyman's handwritten in praise of mystery, a poem for Europa, along with the silicon microchip stenciled with more than 2.6 million names submitted by the public. The microchip will be the centerpiece of an illustration of a bottle amid the Jovian system, a reference to NASA's Message in a Bottle campaign, which invited the public to send their names with the spacecraft. Now, a golden record for Europa. It's made of a tantalum metal about 7 by 11 inches. Notice the number 711. We'll get to that in a minute. The plate features graphic elements on both sides. The outward-facing panel features art that highlights Earth's connection to Europa. Linguists collected recordings of the word water spoken in 103 languages. Notice the number 103. Get rid of the 0. You have 13. We'll get to 13, the numerology of 13, and the importance and significance in a minute. But this is spoken in 103 languages from families of languages around the world. The audio files were converted into waveforms, visual representations of sound waves, and etched into the plate. The waveforms radiate out from a symbol representing the American Sign Language sign for water. You can see right here. This is really cool. The art on the side of the plate, which will seal an opening to the vault on NASA's Europa Clipper, features waveforms that are visual representations of the sound waves formed by the word water in 103 languages. Now, the Voyager spacecraft has a golden record carrying sounds and images that convey the richness and diversity of life on Earth. The layered message on Europa Clipper aims to spark the imagination and offer a unifying vision. I mean, if they don't think anybody's going to be there, if they don't think anybody's out there, then why take the time to etch water in sign language, 103 languages? They also have the Drake equation, over 2.5 million names. They've got a lot of data on this space probe that they're sending to Europa. Why? Why did they put all that information on the Voyager? In hopes that somebody, something would find the Voyager in the future and take that information and learn from the data, and then maybe respond to the data in hopefully friendly fashion. Now it's launching from the Kennedy Space Station in Florida. It's going to arrive in Jupiter or at the Jupiter system in 2030. It's going to have about 50 flybys of the moon Europa. And the main goal is to determine whether there are places below Europa that could support life. Well, of course there is. Of course there is. The life under the ice of Europa is abundant and bountiful and amazing. It's going to be beyond many people's wildest dreams, unless you have an open mind to discern and not so open that your brain falls out on the sidewalk. Because it has to be open to work like a parachute, otherwise it won't work. And if it's too open, then you could put anything in there and it could fall out pretty easy. So you got to use discernment. And when you look at the biomarkers, the signatures of life, for example, carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and exuberant amount of water with an ice crust that would protect much of the water from radiation. I mean, this is amazing. The life underneath the ice of Europa, there could be more aquatic life there than here, by far. I mean, imagine manta bees and sharks and dolphins and blue whales. Imagine octopuses and squids. And now let's merge all of these together and imagine a water world without the destruction of industries and the pollution of certain industries. Imagine how life will thrive in that environment. I mean, it's going to be unprecedented. There could be 1,000 times the amount of life under the ice on Europa than on Earth. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of this aquatic life is quite intelligent. Maybe not in the way that we look at as building stuff and blowing stuff up, at least the militaries out there of the world, are like, well, look at this new thing that we can blow up now. It's amazing. Maybe they're at a more, at a cerebral level where they can actually leave the typical five senses and explore other senses and sensory perceptions with a far higher IQ, if we were to measure it that way, and a different emotional landscape, a different emotional structure to support the intelligence and the different levels of understanding through sensory perception that most people don't have or even care to have or ever even thought of having. This is amazing. This, to me, is a telltale sign when you look at the date 2030, the significance of 2030 here in the US, 2030 now there, 2029, the flyby of the comet called Apophis, the god of chaos, the eclipse that's coming up here in just a month that's going to finalize the Omega symbol over the US. The first to come across was the Alpha symbol, now the Omega symbol 7 years later. The 7 cities of Salem, the 7 cities of Nineveh, along the paths of the eclipse. There's something significant. In 2030, I have a theory that by 2030, we're going to publicly discover life, intelligent life, in our solar system. Highly advanced life forms, highly advanced civilizations, and beings and peoples that are so beyond what most comprehend, it's going to shatter the paradigms of many people. A lot of us are going to be like, yeah, we knew. We're gonna smoothly move into this new transition of understanding and thought because we already knew. It's not going to be new for us per se. It's going to be like amazing. And we're going to be like, yeah, we told you so. Kind of like with gold, right? I mean, I've been telling you now for 7 years, or at least I've been saying, hey, you know, look into gold. Well, it's at an all-time high again. It keeps breaking all-time highs. They're like, it's amazing. So anyway, sidetrack. But and yeah, you should have listened to me like 7 years ago on that. And you still should. Bitcoin, amazing, just hit an all-time high again. I've been talking about Bitcoin now for 7 years. But let's go back to Europa. Europa has produces at least 1,000 tons of oxygen every 24 hours. That's enough for 1 million people to breathe, whether it's, you know, like a lot of breath, I don't know, but I would think that with that much water on a planet, like how much oxygen here is produced from water? It's probably more than that, folks, but let's just go with that. 1,000 tons of oxygen production every 24 hours, enough for 1 million people. They found carbon dioxide. NASA's Webb finds carbon source on surface of Jupiter's moon, Europa. Now, look at the image of Europa from the James Webb telescope. Look at that. It looks like Earth almost. It looks Earth-like. Obviously, a lot more water, but it's got that blue hue to it and the cloud cover. And they did find carbon dioxide, which is a telltale sign for life. Jupiter's moon, Europa, is one of a handful of worlds in our solar system that could potentially harbor conditions suitable for life. Potentially, it's almost absolute. Now, whether or not we go out there and we find these mermaids and mermen that are, you know, like working on tablets underwater with holographic technologies and the ability to launch torpedoes with buttons that they push on their wrist, I don't know. I would guess, and I am going to make I am going to send out a forecast that when we do send these probes and they get there and they scan the area. Whether or not they share this with the public, but I think they will, because 2030 is most likely the time that they actually, when I say they, I'm referring to those that pretty much control the show publicly and behind the scenes. There will be this public disclosure then of the others. They're going to call them the others. They're not going to call them aliens. They're not going to call them extraterrestrials. They're not going to call them gods. They're not going to call them angels. They're going to call them the others. Now, there are going to be people that call them all of those things, but publicly, they're going to be called the others. And the others have colonized our solar system, and they've done it for thousands of years. So most likely we will find highly advanced signs of life on Europa, but it won't be us. It'll be them. It'll be the others. However, the others, their ancestry is connected to our ancestry here on Earth. So that's for a whole other podcast. We have carbon dioxide. We have water. We have all the signs of life. And now NASA is sending a probe to Europa with 2.6 million signatures or 2.6 million names. We've got the Drake equation. We've got a poem that I mentioned earlier. So basically a golden record. Here's the poem. Arching under the night sky, inky. With black expansiveness, we point to the planets we know. We pin quick wishes on stars. From Earth, we read the sky as if it is an unerring book of the universe, expert and evident. Still, there are mysteries below our sky. The whale song, the songbird singing, its call in the bow of a wind-shaken tree. We are creatures of constant awe, curious at beauty, at leaf and blossom, at grief and pleasure, sun and shadow. And it is not darkness that unites us, not the cold distance of space, but the offering of water, each drop of rain, each rivulet, each pulse, each vein. Oh, second moon, we too are made of water, of vast and beckoning seas. We too are made of wonders, of great and ordinary loves, of small and visible worlds, of a need to call out through the dark. This is the poem that will be sent to Europa in the Message in a Bottle campaign. Share with you. So, detecting life's influence on planetary atmospheres. Scroll down, and it says right here, carbon dioxide seasonality would be difficult to detect on other planets, but it is a powerful indicator of the presence of life, since it is unlikely to occur on planets with an ocean unless life is present. They are telling you, ladies and gentlemen, right now, there's life on Europa, and they're going to send a message in the bottle. Now, the question is, what bottle gets sent back? What's going to be in the bottle that gets sent back? When? Who? And what is the significance of that? Wait until they send their probe back to us. Oh, yeah. It's going to be intense. Now, this is what I came up with as far as numerology. So 7-11, right? The plate is 7 inches by 11 inches. Exodus 7:11. Pharaoh's called wise men. Pharaoh's called the wise men of Egypt, the sorcerers. They with scribes also. Their flashings do so. That's the Young's literal translation. So that's Exodus 7:11. 7:11. Now 10:3, there's 103 languages. Well, 13, if you take the 0, now you have 13, because in numerology you would take, 105 would be 15. 103 is 13. So you take Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer, Also, the resurrection of Osiris. Those are two significant connections to 13. Friday the 13th. Why is that considered bad luck by some? Well, because in 1307, Friday the 13th, the Knights Templar were arrested by the King of France, Philip IV. Also, 13 is considered the great mother goddess in ancient occultism, ancient Hermetica. 13 is often connected with the great mother goddess. Friday the 13th, 1314, the Grand Master of the Knights Templar was burned to death. There are allegedly 13 bloodlines that rule the world. 13 months in a lunar cycle. So if you connect the 13 months in a lunar cycle and 13 being connected to the great mother goddess, that would make sense as a feminine aspect. 13. 13 on the $1 bill allegedly means death of the old world and beginning of the new world. It also represents femininity. 13 moon cycles, the beginning and the end, the full cycle of life. Loki was the 13th to arrive at the feast of Valhalla in connection to the killing of the god Balder. Judas was the 13th guest at the Last Supper who betrayed Jesus in that in that teaching, in those scriptures. So there is a lot of occult connections to 13. In 1313, Pope Bull banned the Knights Templar. The next one that I noticed was Europa is 1.8 billion miles from Earth. 1.8 or 18 is a very significant number in numerology. So is 81. And then in the design here, the golden record also has what's called water hole radio emission lines. And in these radio emission lines, you have different frequencies that are supposed to be the most efficient. So listen to this. In astronomy, the term water hole refers to a range of frequencies that are relatively quiet or of background noise, and thus have been considered ideal by some researchers for interstellar communication. These frequencies fall between the hydrogen emission line at 1420 megahertz and the hydroxyl line at 1660 to 1666. So you've got 1420 or 420, which is significant, and then obviously 666 in the 1666. And there was, in the year 1666, there's a lot that happened that year also. So the frequency being between 1420 megahertz and 1666 megahertz. These lines on Europa's Clipper's vault plate represent a connection between water and the search for life beyond Earth. There's also a scientific, mathematical way of expressing the word water. The chemical symbols of hydrogen and hydroxyl, H and OH, represent the products when water molecules are split apart, like the Drake. Okay, so then also the Drake equation, the lines represent our ability to use the language of science to follow our curiosity, as with Europa. The promise of water that has drawn inquisitive human minds to reach out and listen in this radio band for messages from the stars. So they're also saying, look, these are the frequencies to communicate with us. They're sending frequencies to communicate. They're sending names. They're sending water. They are absolutely saying, hey, here we are. Here's our message. What are you going to say back in return? Incredible. Absolutely incredible. The Drake equation, 2.6 million names. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. That's what I'm talking about, right? It's going to get amazing, because once they finally share with us that there is intelligent life, not trillions of light years away, But in our own backyard, in our solar system, it's going to open up the floodgates of intelligent life. It's going to go from, oh, well, there's one moon orbiting Jupiter that's chock full, that is absolutely full of life. Imagine the fish that are going to come out of there. Imagine the type of aquatic life that we're going to see in 10 years or less from moons in our own solar system. It's amazing. What a beautiful time to be here. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a fantastic day. Check us out on Patreon. We have exclusive content on Patreon, and you can sign up on Patreon for like $1. And also check back here on YouTube. Just check back daily, because a lot of times notifications don't get sent out for whatever reason. So just make it a part of your daily routine to check back. And be excellent to each other. Do something nice for somebody. Think amazing thoughts. Be well, hit the bell, and be the change you want to see. I'm Rex Bear.